Welcome to MGAA Conversations, our new podcast channel where we'll be discussing with an exciting number of guests all things related and topical within the ever-growing MGA community. Hello and welcome to the latest MGAA Conversations podcast, and today we're going to be talking about tech. I'm delighted to welcome Paul Templar, CEO of VIPR Solutions, who's going to run us through the current technology landscape as well as some other interesting topics. Paul, welcome.
Mike, great. Thanks so much for having me.
Excellent. Like the clock in the background there, Paul. Excellent. Okay.
It's a good clock.
It's a good clock. Okay, so let's get straight into it. So, Paul, for our listeners, please share with us a little bit of your background and how you came to co-found VIPR Solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. So VIPR's been around since 2009. So we've been in the market for around 15 years now. And how we all got started. So I was working with two very inspirational gentlemen, Richard and Bob Brown, in a previous business. In fact, it was the very first personal finance comparison website before the likes of Money Supermarket and Go Compare and the like came about. So they'd set that up, and I was working with them on the technical side of things. Bob was had a background in the Lloyds market. He was a very senior Lloyds broker, and he'd retired out of the market. And he was constantly getting asked by his former colleagues and peers, you know, you do sort of technical stuff. We've got lots of technical problems. Can you help us? And eventually he succumbed to all the requests that are coming through. And we set up VIPR in response to that. And the company as it is today really is there to, as a result of those questions that were coming through to Bob.
No regrets about not going down the Money Supermarket or confused.com.
Yeah, I mean, what could have been?
Huh? Always look forward, don't look back. I think that's the right thing.
Absolutely right.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's it. I've taken away my rear view mirror, so I can only look forwards.
Excellent. So, turning to the sort of fast-moving world of technology, be very interested to get your take on how you see, I suppose the way I would describe it, you know, the IT health of, you know, the key stakeholders. So insurers, brokers, MGAs, and obviously the organisations which are sometimes left out but are critical in that chain, the claims TPAs. So, you know, how would you give each of them a current IT health check?
Yeah, it's really interesting as you look across the market. I think there is now a genuine desire to embrace technology and IT within all of those organisations. There is absolutely a difference between the very best and those that need improving within the market in terms of the technology that's being used, and quite a gap. I remember in the early days, I was out in Florida at one of the conferences, and everyone was very excited about how XML was going to change the world and all this data was going to be moved around via XML. And here we are, you know, 12 years later, and actually that didn't transpire. But it feels like today we're actually in a position where we can start to make a difference. I think some of the technologies that are out there really are given the ability for these organizations to start to transform, to start to embrace some of these technologies. And the bar to entry is lowering, so they can actually realistically start to employ some of this great technology that's available in the market today. But as I say, I think right now there's quite a big gap between the very best and those that need to improve.
And if you look circling back, if you look like a podium, so let's take each individual sort of stakeholder. So if you look at the insurer family, you know, it's a well-trodden path in terms of their challenges with legacy systems. Your sense of where they are both now and looking forward, you know, what challenges and potential opportunities, how would you rate them?
Yeah, so I think from an insurer's point of view, as you rightly say, that there's been a lot of challenges they've had to face in terms of different directions of technology, a lot of legacy platforms that they've had to work with over the years, and they're still in existence, and certainly a lot of change in the market of different things that have come in that have some have been adopted, some haven't. I think they're actually in pretty good shape. That from an insurer's standpoint, I think they are embracing the technology. They're looking forwards. They're certainly trying to encourage the parties that they're working with to adopt some of these standards. And I think we're a little bit away from being able to have a single standard across the market for transferring data, but some of the technologies that are now being adopted are able to counter that in terms of they don't need necessarily the data to come in a single standard. They can transform that data into a single standard. So that works pretty well. Obviously, we're still seeing changes in the market. We're seeing changes with Blueprint 2, with CDR, and other things that are coming through. So it's still very much a changing landscape. But actually, I think that a lot of the insurers are in a very good position to be able to cope with that.
And again, just if I may, just focus is still on insurers, and with a question to you on this sort of sentiment. Do you feel that they've moved at all around looking externally through a customer lens of what customers require in terms of building IT architecture, or is the bias still a little bit in terms of what's fit for purpose for their own systems internally? Because those are two different things, and I know that you have insurers as clients, so I'd be interested in your sense on that.
Yeah, so we're very much working in the delegated space. So as you're aware, something around 40% of the market that gets transacted, or the business transacted within Lloyds, and the company market is on a delegated basis. So we're definitely seeing the insurers themselves are becoming more and more customer focused, and there's a lot more regulation around making sure that they're doing the right thing as far as the customers are concerned. And that then feeds through into what the likes of the MGAs and the TPAs are doing to ensure that message is continuing and that they're doing the right things. We're certainly seeing much more use of platforms like quote and buy issuance type platforms being used in the market, which means there's a very good experience for the customers. And in terms of the claims process, we're seeing improvements. But as with all these things, there's definitely more work to be done, and more that can be done to do a better job for the ultimate customer.
Okay, and obviously with particular relevance to our listeners, and certainly in the MGA community, the bill of health you would give MGAs in terms of your experience of working with them in terms of technology.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So we're finding that the MGAs are incredibly entrepreneurial. They're very, very focused on finding ways that they can grow their businesses and improve their operations, find efficiencies in what they're doing, and ultimately give that better experience for their customers. And we're certainly seeing that the use of things like the quote and buy platforms, much more straight through processing in use. And I think generally there is that desire to find ways to do the job better. Again, the gap between the very best and those that need improvement is still quite large. We're still seeing situations where some smaller MGAs haven't the ability or maybe the funds to be able to invest in some of these platforms, because some can be quite expensive. But those that do seem to be really reaping the rewards from it.
You make a good point around that sort of affordability. Do you see, looking forward, that affordability will come down and come into the scope of those maybe smaller MGAs, or do you see that affordability being sort of unfortunately slightly out of reach?
Yeah, it's an interesting situation. We've definitely seen that some of the technology is starting to reach some of those smaller parties in the market with perhaps smaller budgets, and that might be either scaled down versions of the technology so it can be delivered more affordably, or indeed just simply price points are starting to come down. There's definitely a job for the vendors to do, to take a step back and decide sort of where they want to play and what sort of market they want to aim for. it's very easy to sort of say, actually, I only want to play with the mid and upper market players because they've got bigger budgets, bigger money to be had. But actually, a lot of the startups and the smaller entities have got really good growth potential, and by working with them, you have the ability to grow with them. So that really shouldn't be overlooked.
Okay, and just that's really interesting. And just on this same theme and more around products. So you've referenced quite rightly quote and buy, and we know if we look across the market, and obviously personal lines was first adopters in terms of and micro SME obviously is done on quote and buy straight through. Do you see a move to the more complex products being able to be transacted, say, on a digital basis, but perhaps with complementary human intervention? Are you seeing an acceleration to that move?
Yeah, I think there's definitely again the desire to see how technology can assist in these processes. But as you rightly say, that there's definitely the need for human intervention within this loop, for the ability for individuals with a great deal of experience and skill to step in and do some of the underwriting, the work that's involved. But actually, some of the more mundane tasks can easily be catered for with technology. So I would imagine there will be more of a hybrid approach initially, moving more towards technology. But I think that human in the loop will need to be there for the more complex situations.
So if we, I don't want to sort of touch on a later question, but if we played forward, you would still see the personal lines and micro SME probably be in a no touch world, but those more complex type products, let's say something like a medium-sized commercial combined, whatever, that they would the technology would do a lot of the heavy lifting, but then you'd still have the underwriting overview. That's the ultimate goal. Yeah.
Yeah, Doug, I think that's going to be the case for the short, medium term. I think maybe over the longer term that could change, and as you alluded to, perhaps some of the conversation points that we'll come on to will help steer that more towards an automated journey. But I still think we're a little way away from that.
Interesting. Okay, so it won't surprise you, I couldn't do a technology-based sort of podcast without referencing AI. Okay, for myself in particular, being selfish, and our listeners, could you perhaps sort of demystify parts of AI which actually is just rubbish in terms of what's been said, and actually what is real? So I think what would be useful, what is real and what actually is aspirational.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really interesting, if you said to somebody in the street today, what do you know about AI? They'd probably reference things like Chat GPT as an example of AI. Artificial intelligence, machine learning has been around for a very long time, but actually we're starting to see some real advancement at the moment in terms of what's available and what's being done in the market. And actually the speed of change right now is incredible. It's been adopted in ways that we've never seen previously. So, things like ChatGPT is an obvious starting point. I think probably most of the listeners would have had some sort of interaction with ChatGPT, whether it's to get it to write them a poem or maybe improve an email or just do some sort of some text-based tasks for them. It is absolutely an incredible bit of technology when you play with it for the first time. It's outstanding what it can do. It is really good. But actually, the speed that this technology is moving is the really interesting piece for me. It's a personal passion of mine in terms of AI and what's happening in the market. And we're starting to see now things like autonomous agents and AI that can perform tasks for you. So things like, book an Uber for you or book some flights and those sorts of things that it never was able to do before. So the speed that things are moving now is quite outstanding. And there's sort of a school of thought that would say that we're fast approaching AGI, which is kind of this mecca for AI, which is kind of a human-like level of intelligence and reasoning that we've not quite got got to yet, but we seem to be teetering very, very, very close to achieving that. I mean, in terms of its real everyday use, we've kind of bucketed it into two distinct areas. One is the use in an operational standpoint. So, how can we use it to help improve the way we operate as a business, but also help our customers? So things like for our staff, the ability to be able to access HR information or policies, or just general product information, so they can get to that really quickly by just asking questions, and the AI will go away, retrieve that data, and bring it back to them. So that works really well. From a customer standpoint, perhaps the use within help desks or support areas. So being able to give the AI the information about all of our products, some common questions, and actually it becomes a really good way of interacting with that content and retrieving the type of information that is needed. So that works incredibly well, and it's something that we're trialing at the moment. And then the other bucket is really to do with how can we improve our product lineup in terms of using AI. So a lot of what we do is to do with taking data that's non-standard, standardizing it and validating it. So we're looking at the uses of AI around how we can augment all of those processes and actually make our customers' journey in using the products far simpler.
That's interesting.
I think the simple answer is that it's a exceptionally fast-moving world at the moment, and things that we were exploring with a month ago have almost been superseded by even better things today. So part of it is just taking a step back and taking a watching brief as to how things develop, using it for what it's really good at today, but actually keep an eye on the future, because the future capability of this will be incredible, and it will change a lot of what we're doing across the board.
And do you agree or disagree that, with AI advancement, that should be complementary to, alongside human intervention and support, as opposed to replacement?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think someone described it to me as AI is a bit like a bionic suit that you can put on. On your own, you can lift so much weight, but with your bionic suit, you can do a lot more. And that's quite right. I think the situation right now is that it's an accelerator. It's enabling you to do things far faster than you would have been able to do previously, and potentially get better results as well. So you can, if you're having a bit of a moment and you want to think about how you might want to construct an email or a report or a letter, you can actually get AI to help you really get started quite quickly. So it's absolutely that enabler and that superpower that it is where it should be used at the moment. We're certainly seeing, if you use it in things like assisting with writing code, it's incredibly good at getting code generated very fast, but you still need that expert in the room to make sure that what's been generated makes sense. It ties in with the bigger picture, because it can be quite an isolated view in terms of what it's producing, just to make sure that it's doing the right thing for you. So yeah, I would say right now you've got a superpower. In the future, we might see that it starts to do things autonomously, but that's again a little way away. And I think it's also a way, even if it were there today, I think it would take a while for people to trust it.
Just a couple of observations on, be interested in your view on ChatGPT, which you mentioned. It's quite. I think all businesses have to be quite careful how they use that, because I've seen interactions on Twitter and on LinkedIn where there are accusations that the response is just is a AI response, and it's just a natural sort of, especially around complaints. And one of the particular ones I saw last night was from a rail company, so you can imagine what that was. And effectively, they're not really taking it seriously. It's just an organised response. So I think from an insurance perspective, where we pride ourselves on a service delivery, I think it'd be interesting in your view, but industries, companies in particular, need to look at how they use that And going back around, if I sort of use the phrase sort of chat box, I was at a presentation where Consumer Intelligence did a presentation, and they put up a pie chart where they'd surveyed a large number of consumers and asked the question about how favourable are you to chatbots. And before they announced the results, they asked everyone in the room. I know you're smiling. I can imagine where it went. 80% of who they surveyed said they didn't like them at all.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's definitely something that will develop over time. I think when call centers first started getting shipped overseas, nobody liked that, and they just wanted to talk to somebody locally. And I think we're seeing a similar sort of thing where this is new. It's a different way of interacting. It's interesting that I would probably say if you were then to take that survey and segment it by generation, you might find that the younger generation are much more receptive to that sort of thing than perhaps the older generation. So it may well be a generational thing that the younger generation coming through are happier to interact in that way than perhaps the older generation that would want to speak to somebody rather than typing to a keyboard.
No, that's a good point. Sorry, good point. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so I think everything has its place, and these things will develop over time, and we will see as time goes on sort of how people prefer to interact. And I think there's definitely a school of thought that would say getting instantaneous gratification, getting that answer that you want straight away, rather than sitting for half an hour in a call queue, is better. But it's horses for courses, isn't it? Some people will like it, some people won't.
That's good. I suppose as long as the choice is there, then that will satisfy customers.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I think choice is the key here. Giving people the option of how they interact. It's like telephone banking, isn't it? Or mobile banking. You could choose to do that rather than walking into your local branch. You get the answers much faster, but some people still prefer to speak to a cashier, have a little chat, do their transaction, and walk back out again. And that's absolutely fine. Yeah. You just need to give that choice.
So just changing tact a little bit, you'd be aware around the sort of coin the phrase war on talent, which has probably been, in existence for the last 2 years. I speak to a lot of our members, and that still rages quite strong, especially in the underwriting expertise area or whatever. So I'd be very interested in your sense in terms of the IT profession in particular. What is it you are doing? What more perhaps could the IT profession community do to ensure you attract the brightest minds to sort of our industry, financial services, and any insight in terms of whether you're losing people to other sectors, I think would be most interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. It's. I mean, you're quite right. It's been a very tricky period for recruiting across the board. Wages seem to be going up incredibly. We're seeing the pool of talents quite small for the niche that we're looking to recruit for. And when we do find someone good, they've snapped off the market incredibly fast. So it's definitely a tricky situation out there. I think if you look at sort of the general employment side of things, you can approach it from a standpoint that, look, we're just going to pay the best wages. We'll pay the most money, and we'll attract people into the industry. And that's absolutely a valid way to go. But actually, the other thing you can do is to make it a really good place to work. So actually have your staff as advocates for working with your business. And we've had great success at this, that we've been able to attract some really good talent through people recommending people they've worked with in the past and encouraging them to come and work with us. And I think that whole culture and sort of looking after the staff angle cannot be underestimated at all. It's so important to look after your staff. I mean, you often hear that stats like it's really hard to win a new customer, but it's really easy to lose them, and you've got to do the right things to keep them. The same applies to staff. Your staff is your business. It's the team that you're working with, and they need to make sure you need to make sure that they feel that they've got a home, that they are well regarded, well respected, and that you're rewarding them for the work that they do, but also that there's a really clear path of progression, that you're supporting them through extra learning, extra qualifications, that you're pushing them and making sure that they're getting the best out of the role as much as you are. So I think it's really hard to fly the flag and say, look, come and work for insurance. But actually, I think if you're known as a really good employer, you will naturally attract some really good talent.
Yeah, I suppose from sort of my generation, when I was looking to get jobs, I think one of the key differences I've seen is that uh, you know you used to be interviewed for a role in my generation, but now it seems that the interviewee or the applicant is interviewing you as to whether they want to work for you, which is I think is very healthy and very
Yeah.
positive. But that's one of the biggest changes I've sort of seen from that bit.
Yeah, and I think you're right. And I think the other change as well is certainly as a result of COVID is the whole working from home
Yeah,
debate. That a lot of the applicants these days would prefer a work from home role, and we certainly try and offer that flexibility, but we do encourage people to come into the office because you do miss that water cooler
yeah,
moment and that bit of social
yeah.
interaction and all of that stuff. So it's certainly something that we're supportive of people working remotely, but actually come into the office and interact with your colleagues, and you will build great relationships. And again, that's the way that you build teams, and that you're able to sort of grow as a team. And it's really hard to do that remotely. We found ways to do it, but there has to be a balance there.
I couldn't agree more. I think that interaction is so critical, especially for new or younger sort of entrants into our industry, because that's where you
Absolutely.
get different challenges, meet people from all different backgrounds, and then you can build your knowledge base. So I couldn't agree more.
Oh, you're so right. And I think sort of bringing on that mixture of candidates, those that are completely green, first jobbers, through to those
Yeah,
that are incredibly
yeah,
experienced. There's a place for everybody, and there's huge benefits for having that mixture of experience and talent within the firm.
absolutely. So you briefly touched on CDR and sort of standard data standards, and clearly Lloyd's is on a very steep or large sort of digital runway, as we know, and we as the
Mm.
association contribute to that on behalf of our members. So given where you are and for VIPR, if you take a step back, you know what's your sentiments around the current direction of travel for Lloyd's Blueprint 2, and are you confident that if we looked in 2 or 3 years time that objective to move to a digital marketplace, whilst with the right harmony in terms of underwriting, but the back office stuff is going to be successful?
Genuinely, I do hope it will be. I mean, we've seen a lot of things happen over the years that had huge promise, but maybe didn't quite deliver on what we wanted. At the moment, Blueprint 2 doesn't have a massive impact in the
Correct.
delegated
Yeah.
arena, but we know it's coming. We know that CDR at some point will be there to replace Lloyd's cover holder reporting standards and the like. So we're definitely prepared for that, and we're keeping a real watching brief on what's happening under Blueprint 2. We're members of Accord, so we keep an eye on sort of what's coming from there, and we keep a very close eye on the press, on the Lloyd's website, the news releases, etc., that's coming out. So yeah, it certainly has promise, and I hope that Lloyd's and the associations are able to drive the change through to move it to more of a digital marketplace. I think there's increasing challenges from a global marketplace
Yeah.
standpoint that other markets are easier, arguably, to do
Yeah.
business
Good
with.
point.
And I think it's essential that Lloyd's achieves what they're trying to do, which is to make it easier and lower cost to deal with the market to ensure its future stability.
I think you raised some very good points there, because I think you know there's a number of failed attempts, or left at the altar sort of moments, and I think this time it's really one which can't fail, actually, for the reasons you've articulated. Lower cost, easier to do business with, because Otherwise, other organisations, other markets will continue to advance, and they will attract the business because of all those areas you just mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, there's absolutely that kudos of having the Lloyds stamp on your insurance certificate. But if somebody's offering you that same insurance for 25, 30, 40, 50% less, there's still that temptation to say, yeah, that's nice. But so I think, we just need to find a way to reduce costs, reduce friction, and, make trading far, far simpler in the London market.
Okay, so final question, and you're not going to get off the hook on this one. So crystal ball moment. Okay, if we were sat here in 5 or 10 years' time, how do you think we will be transacting business? And between that period, is there going to be a sliding doors moment?
Yeah, it's a really tricky question. So I've got my crystal ball out, and I'm gonna have some big guesses here. I'm going to back the fact that we will achieve a digital marketplace. So we're going to see more straight through processing happening. I think that we will have taken great strides with AI. So a lot of the mundane tasks that we're having to do will now be automated. So we're able to transact far simply. And a lot of the great talent in the market will still be around, but they will be designing these processes. They'll be interacting with these new technologies, and it will be a harmony of technology and talent that will drive the market forwards.
Excellent. Well, let's hope all that comes to pass, Paul. Let's hope all that comes to pass. Paul, absolutely delighted to speak to you. Thanks very much for your insight. Very insightful for our listeners. And again, thank you very much for your time.
Really good conversation. Thanks so much.
Many thanks for listening. We welcome all feedback, so please get in touch with your suggestions on topics and future guests. Please don't forget to subscribe on your chosen platform so that you don't miss out.